Hi everybody, welcome back. Tony again here with Shinsho Yoga. And for this week's video, I'd like to talk about the concept of why nice guys finish last. And although the term is nice guys finish last, this really doesn't necessarily apply just to men. According to YouTube analytics, 75% of my followers and people who watch are men, so there you go, it speaks to that. But it really, it speaks to anyone, because the same rule applies across the board. And before I even get into it, this wasn't even an idea that I had figured out on my own, really. I had seen this in a video I watched of a woman who was talking about this, and it struck a chord with me and kind of all clicked in how she put it. I had understood some concepts over the years, but when I watched this video, I don't have the woman's name, unfortunately. I saw it in passing, and I'm like, she's 100% right. So I wanted to share that along here with my own thoughts. And so why do nice guys finish last? You lack boundaries. And you don't know how to say no. Think about what a nice guy is. Nice guy, right? So if someone talks about a nice guy, what is your image of a nice guy, right? Nice guy is always there when you need him. Nice guy doesn't get angry. Nice guy doesn't hold a grudge. Nice guy, if you say you're sorry, goes, oh, okay. Nice guy you can always count on, etc., 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 right? That all sounds like good traits, especially for people who like to take advantage of that, especially for narcissists, especially for self-centered people. Nice guys don't know how to say no, right? They don't have boundaries, right? They let people do whatever they do to them, and they go, okay. What you allow in your life, you have to be very careful of, because you're teaching others how to treat you. I wish it wasn't this way. I wish it was the way of that people looked at you and say, I wouldn't want to be treated this way, so I won't, the golden rule. But that is not how people act. And I've learned that over the years. People do what they can get away with. It's that simple. In a lot of the positions I've had outside of, teaching yoga and such, when I was in the financial services world and I was in the compliance division, I was the police of the finance world, of the stock market. And I can tell you that if we weren't there governing what trades were made and what were done in client accounts, people would have done all kinds of heinous crap, because they do what they can get away with. Nice guys finish last because people can get away with it, right? With them. They always allow them. They always say, it's okay, I understand. And that usually comes from a background, right, of a person who had trouble when they were young and there was no one there to help them. So they understand when mistakes happen. They understand when someone needs help. So when they made a mistake, people probably came down on them and made it very difficult for them. So when you make a mistake, they understand it's just a mistake and they try to be understanding and not come down on you. There was probably times they needed help and no one was there to help them. So when you need help, they give it to you, but they don't understand that people aren't like them, right? They do what they can get away with. And understand, in a lot of relationships, right, and this is where I'll specifically talk to men and women, right? The woman will not respect you if you just allow every transgression to go by. Now, a little caveat before we get into that: you shouldn't be with someone like that. You shouldn't be with someone who you have to constantly draw boundaries with. That's a bad relationship. And you got to think about that, right? But in general, right, back to the point, if you just allow every transgression that goes by and go, okay, your partner won't respect you. Right? This goes for men and women. Right, I can say men here, but the same thing with women. If you're dating someone and this guy keeps doing screwed up things to you, and every time you go, oh, okay, I understand, right? People do what they can get away with. Again, you shouldn't be with a person who's like that. That's not a quality partner. But if you are with someone like that, right, you're not in a place yet where you've been able to grow past that, if you don't draw those boundaries, if you don't learn to say no, right, they'll just walk all over you. And in the end, they'll eventually get bored of it. They'll just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until they realize they can just keep pushing you over. And then they'll go, forget it, this guy's a pushover. And they leave and they're done. That's why you finish last. Because you never say no. You never draw a boundary. Again, you shouldn't be in a relationship with a person who you have to constantly draw boundaries with. In any relationship, you're going to have to learn each other's boundaries no matter what. That should be a healthy part of the relationship, understanding where there are sensitive areas or things that are really meaningful to you or to the other person that you need to take your shoes off before you enter so you don't do damage, right? But if you have to constantly draw boundaries with someone, you shouldn't be with them. That is not a healthy relationship. But again, back to finishing last. If you don't draw boundaries with people, if you don't learn to say no, if you don't say no at all, they'll just keep doing what they do because they can get away with it. Because that is the general mindset of people, I've found. I've had it happen in my life. I'm not saying that I'm the nicest guy in the world, but I have been referred to as, oh, well, Tony's a nice guy. And that I used to think was a compliment. It is not a compliment. It means you're a pushover. Because I didn't draw boundaries with people. Because as I said, when I was younger, there were times that I especially was criticized heavily. So I try not to heavily criticize others because I know there's no good in it, right? I know there's times I've needed help and there was no one to help me. So I always try to offer help to others. But people don't think like I do. They're doing what they can get away with. There was a time when I first started teaching that a studio I went to locally, I'd been recommended to. They were looking for a teacher, and one of my students said, hey, why don't you go there and teach? I'll give her your name. So I went there, and the woman was very excited. She said, oh, you come heavily recommended, Tony, and so many of my students have already been to your classes. I can't wait for you to start, and this and that, and da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, great. And she's, as I'm talking to her, and just being polite and friendly, she goes, oh, Tony, you're such a nice guy. I'd really like you to meet my sister. She never asked if I was in a relationship. I just went, oh, okay. She goes, yeah, my sister, she just needs a nice guy. She needs a nice guy. If anybody ever tells you that, run. Run. Go then. Go, thanks, nice talking to you. Bye. Feet don't fail me now. Get out of there. Because what that person is bad news. They are a mess. They are a project. And they're handing it off to you, right, to fix. Like every time someone says to you, and I'm going to speak directly to the men here. I don't know what women say to each other with this. I know with men. If anytime someone says to you, oh, all she needs is a nice guy, get out of there. Because that girl is a project. That person needs to go to a therapist. That person needs work. And what it'll mean is a one-sided relationship where you're constantly dealing with their issues and their problems and everything their needs and their wants, and they will just continue to walk over you and test the boundaries until you say no. That is not a relationship. That is not anything you want to be a part of. So when this person said that to me, I just went, oh, because I was actually at a point in my life where I was starting to understand that. When every time I heard, he's a nice guy, I went, this one's a project. This one has problems. And they want me to handle that. I'm not a social worker. And I don't want that in my relationship. I don't need to take on the damaged and the broken. You need to fix yourself before you get into a relationship with another. It is not the other's job to fix you. Your garbage is your garbage. Their garbage is their garbage. Don't bring it in and dump it on somebody else, right? It doesn't mean that we walk into a relationship perfect. It just means that we walk in knowing of our issues and dealing with them, and the other person allows us to do that. It's not their job to fix you. It's their job to give you space to allow you to work through it as need be. So why do nice guys finish last? You don't know how to say no, and you don't have any boundaries. And honestly, if you're getting involved with people, like I said, you don't want to be in a relationship like that, you're going to need to spend time working on yourself. Because why are you choosing people like that? That's the big one. Why are you choosing people like that? I had to work on that myself. I still work on that. Sometimes I'll meet somebody and be like, "Hi," and I'm like, "Oh, these seem fun," and I'm like, little red flags are all going to make me like, "You've seen this all before, man. What are you doing?" And then I go, "Oh yeah, I gotta go. See you around. Bye." Right? You shouldn't be attracting people like that. And if you're attracting people like that, you need to spend time and work on yourself. Doesn't mean you're not a good person. Doesn't mean that you can't be a nice guy. But you have to know how to recognize these people, especially the narcissists, the self-absorbed, and say no. Right? It doesn't mean becoming ruthless. It doesn't mean becoming an egotistical jerk. It means learning to say no. You can still be a nice guy and tell people no. Let me repeat that. You can still be a nice guy and tell people no. Okay? So, learn boundaries. Learn to say no. And don't get involved with people like that. That's my 2 cents. As always, take from that what serves you and get rid of the rest. That doesn't mean take what's comfortable and get rid of what's uncomfortable, because we often need what is uncomfortable to serve us. That's all I have for this week. Thanks again for watching. Namaste.